Hi, welcome to Jomar Valve for this 2-inch add valve installation. For this installation you're going to need your add valve, top and bottom body halves with the 4 bolts and nuts that are supplied, both your testing end caps with an air chuck to apply pressure, Loctite with a brush, a torque wrench to apply 100 inch-pounds, a fine grit sandpaper to clean your pipe, adjustable wrenches, a drill, either corded or battery operated, with a backup battery if you go that route, 9/16 sockets, and a socket adapter and 9/16 wrench, a hammer and flathead screwdriver, and needle nose pliers. Alright, let's get started. Alright, so here we're taking our sandpaper, a fine grit sandpaper, and clean the pipe. Make sure you got it clean. Remove any debris or residue. This is going to help with your adhesion for your Loctite. You can see the body halves are marked. If your body halves don't come marked, you're going to want to pre-mark them before putting your Loctite on. Go ahead and dry fit onto your pipe before using the Loctite. That way you can see which way is going to fit the best. And then once your Loctite's on, there's no question. Here we're using a Type K copper pipe, 2-inch. So now we're applying the Loctite. Use it liberally. You want to get a good coating on both halves of the body. Remember, this is going to be the gasket that's holding back pressure for you. So use the full tube, cover both body halves. Alright, so remember you marked your valve when you dry fit it. So go ahead and mount it back on the pipe, that orientation. You're going to want to mount it as close as possible to having even gaps on both sides of the valve. This is going to help during the final torquing process when you tighten it down, because it is critical that the gap on both sides of the valves in all direction is equal. So now we're tightening these down in an X pattern. We're using a torque wrench here, and we're tightening down to about 100 inch-pounds. Once we've got it tightened down to 100 inch-pounds, we're gonna look down both sides of the valve to make sure we got the gap distribution even. So there you can see gap distribution on one end versus the other. They're identical. So now we're ready to pressure test. We're going to remove the top and bottom cap, pull the cutter out, and put the testing caps on. And we're going to apply low pressure here, between 10 and 20 pounds to check for any leaks before we start cutting. This is checking for any leaks in the gasket. So we're spraying this with this is Big Bubble leak detector, but just soap and water will do the trick. Make sure you pressurize the top and the bottom chamber. And it's critical that you don't start the cutting process unless you've done this step and find that there are no leaks. Now before you go ahead and take the caps off, go ahead and relieve the pressure. And now we're ready to start the cutting process. So the cutting process is going to be a 2-person operation. 1 person to operate the stem travel and 1 person to operate turning the cutter. For these larger sizes with double stem, we do recommend using a drill to operate the cutter as another person advances the stem. You want to keep the drill speed consistent, and if you feel the stem start to bind, stop the drill, back the stem out slightly, and then restart the drill. This can happen, a couple times during the process. You're going to want to make sure you have a backup battery in case your battery happens to die during the process, and it wouldn't hurt to have a backup socket wrench as well. Now here you can see the cutter started to bind. We backed out the stem slightly, and then we restarted the cutter. Now we're advancing the stem again. So here we're about halfway through the pipe. Now at this point, the person operating the stem can feel that there's no resistance anymore to advance the stem downward. So at this point, you're going to go ahead and advance the stem all the way down until the cutter seats at the ring in the bottom chamber. This is going to expand the Viton plug across the flow and stop your water. So now you can go ahead and take your bottom cap off and remove your plugs. You'll probably need to pound those out with a flat screwdriver and grab them with a pair of needle nose pliers. Now once both plugs are out, you're going to want to back the stem out slightly to allow water to run through and flush out any debris that might be in the pipe, and then reseat the cutter to the bottom position to expand that Viton plug again. So we've disassembled the add valve. Here's a view of the cutter with the cutter teeth, and then the gasket as it's pulled off the pipe. You can see that the gasket's complete, and any spots that were missing on the body halves are still on the pipe. So we had a good seal on our gasket there.